Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. Now we come to the episode entitled The Family Bed. It's another Steve Scroven episode, so you know that the family dynamic is going to be excellent for comedy and a wee bit of drama. And this is drama that a lot of parents can relate to, and even if you aren't a parent, if it brings up memories from childhood, you can definitely relate to it. For me, it's the latter case, and that is the issue of a kid not sleeping well in their bed and potential effects it can have on the parents. Now, I can tell you that when I was a wee lad, I really didn't sleep the whole night in my bed. I'd fall asleep early on in my bed because when I was young, I went to bed before the sun was down. I'd wake up, go sleep with my grandparents. It seemed like a nightly ritual. Of course, as I got older, I stopped doing that, but I don't, as I don't have full memories from when I was a kid that age, to think of my mindset, I can't remember the specifics, but it'd probably be similar to what Allie suffers in this episode, and that is afraid of the dark, fear of monsters, all that little childhood jazz. Of course, this being a sitcom focusing more on the adult perspective, we see not only the logic that Allie gives, but we see the effects of her staying with her parents in the bed night after night on Ray and Deborah. And boy, is it interesting. Begins with just an average night. Ray wakes up after getting kicked, right? You know, which even from a little girl kicking him there just randomly unprotected, ooh, that's gonna hurt. And Ray sells it beautifully, like, ugh. And one thing in the blooper reel, for when he says where he gets kicked, he had to say so many different lines for the takes. The one that they used in the final episode is right in the Garden of Good and Evil. But other ones are like right in Granny's apples, right in Geppetto's workshop. Of course, my favorite of the alternate ones are right in Jiminy's crickets. I can kind of see why they didn't go with that one, because that's kind of a euphemism now for cursing, but it would have been funny. But at least unlike the Frank one, there is video of it. Oh, they see that Allie's in the bed again, and it seems like she's been doing it every night. And next night, Allie asks straight up if she can do it. Deborah says yes. Ray's like a little like, which begins a discussion between the parents about whether Allie should stay in her room, whether they should let her stay with them. You know, as Deborah puts it, she needs a rest, which is logical, especially at that age. Children need to sleep. I mean, there's the whole thing about you needing at least 8 hours of sleep, and at Allie's age, at this point, she'd be 6, bordering on 7. She definitely needs her rests. But then Ray counters, her rest, what about my rest? Which is also logical. He works all day. He definitely needs to rest as well. As the episode goes along, he does get some advice from others, more specifically from Frank and Marie. And Frank gives the advice that he thinks is the best for this situation, and that is tough love. Because apparently when Ray was little, he used to do the same thing, but instead of letting him in, Frank would be like, Marie, take him back. They took him back, and eventually he stopped coming in. So Ray gives it a shot, and not as well thought out. Because Allie keeps calling for them like, Daddy, read me another story. I'm hungry. And it's like, oh, it's not going to work. Then once she calls for Deborah, Deborah decides to go down and help her and sleep with her on the Swedish-made bed, as Ray put it. And then the next day, Ray himself gets shanghaied into it. Or pushed into it would probably describe it a little bit better, because as he's talking with Deborah about how they're sleep deprived because of this whole situation, Deborah says, oh, it's your turn tonight. And Ray doesn't want to do it, but then Deborah throws his own tough logic back at him. And of course, Ray being Ray, you know, kind of can see where this is going already. He decides he is not going to sleep with Allie. Instead, he's going to get the next best thing. He's going to get his mother to sleep with Allie so she can rest in there. And just like that is so Ray, get his mother to do what he's supposed to do. Of course, in this situation, out of everything, this is probably the least bad way he could do that, because, I mean, grandmother watching her grandkids sleep, I mean, grandmothers are supposed to be there for their grandkids, so it kind of makes sense. But at the same time, it's like, Ray, you're really going to push this, a parent job, onto your mother? It's one of those, it's a weird situation, but you can see both sides of it pretty clearly. And as you would expect, it comes back to bite Ray on the butt in the best way. Because Ray thinks they're both going to get a good night's sleep that night. It's interrupted by Frank coming in because he doesn't know where Marie is, because he did not see her note because it was up on the pillow. He checked the whole house except that. Allie comes running from her room into the parents' room, screaming about Grandma becoming a monster, all because she put some facial cream on, and Allie, either because of the state of sleep she's in or just being a little kid, thinks that means she turned into a monster. Leads to a big old thing about Ray confessing, saying he just wanted one good night's sleep for them, and of course, with all this going on, not working. Frank does say something that's like, really, Frank? But it definitely speaks of someone from his generation, where he's like, no one discussed this with me, and rightfully so, Marie says. Why should we discuss it with you? It's none of your business. Goes a little back and forth with Frank and Marie about where she sleeps, but it does end with Frank saying something that is a little sweet in the manner that he can be, and that is that he tells Marie that he just can't sleep without her. And she is rightfully pleased by it. And she goes to try to kiss him, but he's like, don't kiss me with that cold cream. Which there are a couple blooper takes of that. The one in the episode, he composed himself well, but another one, he's like, don't kiss me with that. You know, he's tried to say it with a straight face, but it's kind of a hard line to say with a straight face when you're looking at Doris Roberts like that. But I think Peter Boyle played it off well in the final cut. As you can imagine, Deborah is annoyed by everything. She wants to have a talk with Ray, but he manages to weasel his way out of it, at least as far as the episode's running, by letting Allie stay, and then the twins can't sleep, so they come in. And this leads to that one shot that is usually used in a lot of the video packages for this show, and the still for this episode, and that is the twins jumping on the bed. And it's where Ray utters the name of the episode. The family bed. They don't really ever touch on Allie having the sleep issues again after this, so maybe they solve it, and maybe they let her stay occasionally, and then she just works herself out with it. But when it comes to the impact that a child getting into the bed with the parents can have on the parents, it does touch on it well, because the scene where Deborah does throw the tough law of logic back at Ray, you can definitely tell she's sleep deprived because of how Patricia Heaton plays it off. She's being a little bit temperamental at him. Now, there are times she loses her temper normally, but this is like a shortened fuse where even just like the smallest question sets her off. And it's all because Ray is asking a question about this juice thing about the top not popping. The way he says you got to check them when you buy them is a little rough. He's like, you got to check them when you buy them. Like, Ray. And that leads to her going, why don't you buy them? Then you can check them. For that scene, Deborah definitely comes across as the more sleep deprived of the two because of the bed she had to sleep on and Allie and all that. Whereas Ray, he had the queen size bed all to himself. And he slept, but it seems like he slept with issues, but considering what happened the previous night, you can kind of see why. And there's another little thing that it touches on, is that is more nostalgia involving helping children sleep. It's a very small part of the plot, but it connects into children getting into the bed. And of course, this involves Robert. And it's one of many examples throughout the whole show's run of his childhood being not the best. But the sad part about this is a memory that he had a childhood that he enjoyed, that is completely turned on his head when he finds out the truth about it. Which, stick with that thought, because something similar that's going to happen in the next episode. There's going to be a big revelation. And of course, I do have a lot to say about that one, considering its little logical notes. Of course, with this one is that Robert's memory is that when he was a kid and had trouble sleeping, his mother would give him a cup of, as they call it, the colored sugar water, and it put him right out. Without missing a beat, no hesitation, Frank reveals what it was. That was booze. And just the looks on Brad Garrett and Doris Roberts' faces as they play this out, like, Marie's like, oh crap. And you can see the realization settling on Robert. He's like, booze? You gave me liquor? And of course, now that she can't hide it, Marie's like, not liquor, dear. Liqueur. Which that's the first time I ever heard that phrase, liqueur. I thought it was a mock one, but then I found out some liquors are called liqueurs. Just the way she says it, trying to make it sound better. And it really does blow Robert's lid. He's like, you are sick. And then, of course, throughout this whole little thing, a couple other weird things I mentioned, like they never gave him cashews because they could choke on him. And then when he comes back in, we find out another little thing is that when they were kids, Marie told them that the ice cream truck, it made that noise when it was out of ice cream. I just love some of the lines involving them giving that to Robert. Like Frank's is like, what's the big deal? It's not like we let him drive that way. True, but it's like you gave him the liquor. Although it's a little weird from an American standpoint when you think about it through the Italian lens, which at least on Frank's side of the family, he is one generation removed from coming from the island of Sicily. You could kind of see why they would, because in parts of Europe it's not as frowned upon as much to give children alcohol, at least at meals. I believe in the commentary for the Italy episode they do touch on that. It's just one of those things like maybe a glass of wine with dinner, but with that it's like, that's more something like you would give them NyQuil, like the George Lopez joke. 7-jet record. Of course, there's alcohol in the NyQuil too, but it's like a small amount to help you sleep. Literally a nightcap. Whereas that one, I gave him, I'm guessing, a shot glass full of it, and then it knocked him out. Makes me wonder just what the liqueur they gave him tastes like, that he would actually drink it and actually be having it as a pleasant memory. Also makes me wonder why he didn't realize it himself until now, unless it's an alcohol he just never drank on his own. All in all, The Family Bed is a pretty good episode. I wouldn't put it amongst the instant classics like some of the episodes we just touched on, but it does go in the better half category of the season. And definitely a fine episode addressing the family dynamic, the whole thing about children sleeping in the bed, childhood memories that turn into slight trauma, because you can argue that Robert's whole thing is slight trauma, but it's just the point of view of it now that he knows the truth. The only sad thing is that some of this stuff is never mentioned again. Which, of course, the reverse is true with the next episode coming up, because the revelation we get about Robert in the next episode, while it's not brought up often, it is referenced in plenty of episodes after that. Although, considering something that Robert said in an episode early on in this season, you could say that's foreshadowing, but it's hard to tell if they actually knew that was going to happen. And it's an episode that revelation, like I mentioned a little bit before, once we get to it, it's going to have some logic about it question from me, because watching this with analysis mode on, I have to. And of course, that episode coming up is Good Girls.